I thought we were already live. That was the whole point of mine.
Nope, too late for that.
Damn it.
Yep.
I mean, rats for the children listening
Right,
at
right.
11 p.m. Eastern.
We're
8 Pacific,
we are going
5
live
Hawaiian.
on Twitch right now. All right.
Did we name our episode?
Yes, we did.
That's good. That's lucky.
That's
Glad
a good
somebody
positive
did.
thing. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics. I am Evan Irwin, and we begin as we do each and every single week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell,
Brrr.
Ruben Bressler.
I'll echo that, Burr. It is quite cold in the regular part of America.
It is balmy 70 degrees outside right
That's
now.
not a
Sir.
real number.
Thank
It is
you.
9 degrees where I live right now with a 15-degree. The wind is going at 15 miles per hour. I can hear the wind whistling
Yeah.
outside my apartment and moving my doors.
70.
Yeah. Our high tomorrow is going to be 7 here.
I think
Ohio.
And you're at
we-
70?
We're at 70 right now. It was 82 to 84 today, depending on where you were.
Although I guess that's a good thing that you're not in our weather, Evan, because that's like baby making weather, and you really don't need more of that. So.
Wow. Wow. Is that where we're starting, huh?
yeah.
That's where
I'm
how are we kicking this one off?
Yeah, the molecules in warmer climates are further apart.
Right.
And by molecules, what I mean is potential baby makers.
Wow.
But it's cold up here, so you're gonna want to cuddle, and then cuddling leads to more
Right.
Irwins, and that's
As you may or may not
Irwin
know-
pops out. You're like, what happened? I don't know. But was it cold? And they're like, it was cold. And they're like, dude, it was cold.
As you may or may not know from the 80s classic, it is cold in the D. So it is. You don't know it's cold in the D?
I'm not getting that reference.
It's cold in the D. I'm sure somebody knows what I'm talking about. In any case,
Wow.
feel free to move on from the
You
show.
know what? No. You know what? We're not. You know why? Because this is an incredibly slow news week.
This
very
is incredibly.
So first of
ridiculous.
all, for those listening, if my mic is messed up, please
Yeah.
tell me now. And apparently
Yeah,
that
tell him.
stupid Windows update just screwed up my settings along with everything. Completely wrecked the show that night. And then all of a sudden, it had some reason the mic in my webcam was what I was using last week, which sounds about as good as you can imagine a mic and a webcam sounds. Which was really horrible, and I did what I could with the audio, but it was kind of a hot mess. However, we are going to move on. We are going to talk about all things magical, and there was a spoiler this week. There was a legitimate preview that showed up after we got all of those unofficial spoilers that we weren't supposed to. We kind of, we kind of were spoiled there a little bit, as it were. But
I see what you've done, so you don't have to
saw
explain it.
what I did there.
Yeah.
Our spoiler this week comes from the story, and it is the Consulate Crackdown, a 2 white, 3 generic mana rare enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you exile all artifacts your opponents control until Consulate Crackdown leaves the battlefield. So, I would say that I don't see this going anywhere in Constructed, at least standard and modern and so on and so forth. 5 mana is just it's a hair too much. It's a bridge too far. You do have Fumigate, for example, if you're trying to kill creatures. You have Fragmentize for at least pinpointed removal for Smuggler's Copter. This is not the answer to Smuggler's Copter that people were waiting for. However, it is a really cool story card. It does make all the sense in the world. I actually got to read some of the story today, which was really interesting. This was about Rashmi and how she basically was making a planar portal. It doesn't say that she was making a planar portal, but she was totally making a planar portal.
Right. Yeah, I
And-
saw that. That she's trying to transport non-planeswalkers between planes.
Right. And so, Tezzeret's just like a huge prick. Like, he's just like a super prick. He's like a prick with like prick sauce, like just drizzled all over him, because he's just a prick to everybody. Don't
Evan.
Aaron.
Evan.
You know what? I used
one
that
was
thing.
like very difficult to not
That one,
be sexual.
I didn't mean it. You know what? We're gonna keep moving. Anyway,
Okay.
he's a butthole, and he's a butthole to everybody. He's like it's almost like it's basically like over the top, right? Like, everybody is an idiot. Nothing is good enough. Everyone, off with their head. Remove that person.
I mean, to be fair, though, I think I agree with that to a certain extent, but I also think it's interesting that Rashmi acknowledges the fact that him pushing her pushed her to be better. I mean, the methods were terrible, but she does acknowledge that this all came about because of his methods. And I think I even saw some people on Twitter talking about this who are in academia, talking about how you have sort of this love-hate relationship with people where they, you don't like the way they're treating you necessarily, but that treatment doesn't somehow inspire you to be better. And I was really surprised by the people that related to that. Like, it wasn't as simple as just he's a jerk. It was like, yes, he's a jerk, but damn it, I just made the best thing of my life because this guy pushed me. And it was fascinating. It was a neat angle.
It was decent that he wasn't just like, mean to everyone and somehow something comes of it. Like, okay, like he does push Rashmi. I still think, and I know it's tinfoil hat conspiracy time, that Mishra might be in this somewhere.
I remember the article. The story was called Breakthrough, and I remember reading it. And somebody on Vronos, Carrie Burkett, was talking about it on Twitter, and I said to them, I was like, I was really disappointed that the breakthrough was not that she realized she's Mishra and she started reflecting on her post-transition life. I was like, that would have been a really great breakthrough, but sadly, it didn't turn out that way.
Well, maybe they're just just gearing us up. I mean, this is one of those they can plant the seed, and a couple years from now, if they wanted to. I mean, all this stuff is made up, folks. If they wanted to say that for whatever reason, Mishra's soul or body or whatever made its way into Rashmi and she didn't know the whole time, or it was Mishra and he, lost his mind and transitioned to a one, I don't know. Stuff's crap.
Yeah, the argument that this is all just a game is actually holds a lot of sway for me. I was about to be like, isn't Mishra been dead longer than Jesus? Like, hasn't Mishra been dead for actual 5,000 years or something ridiculous? But you were like, nope, it's a game. And I'm like, well, you make a valid point, sir.
They do make it all up.
That is a good point. The other thing I will say, by the way, about Consulate Crackdown is this set is gearing up to have a lot more non-creature artifacts in it. So, like, I wouldn't put it past it to make this a playable card.
No.
Now, I'm not saying that this is a complete all-star. This is going to be a 1 to 2 of, with like another one in the sideboard of white-based control decks. This is not going to be an aggro card. This is going to be an answer to the Grixis Artifacts deck that's going to come out, right?
Sure.
This is a way to answer multiple vehicles as a 2-for-1. Or something.
I could see this in maybe some older formats too. Like I could see maybe like Sun and Moon, sprinkling this in there, or even Legacy Enchantress, dealing with things like Eldrazi, who love them some artifacts, and even the Mud decks. I mean, Stony Silence is fine, but there are some artifacts that don't have activation costs, and you just want to get rid of them. Like I could see, like you said, one or two of sneaking in there.
It's not Vandal Blast sees play in Modern, right? Yep. So if now obviously Vandal Blast has a lot more utility, that you can use it early as a 1-drop to clear out like a Thorn effect. But this is very similar to that. The problem with playing it in Modern is that you already have Fracturing Gust. Mm-hmm. So like, why aren't you just playing Fracturing Gust? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that instead of being a 0, this is probably like a 2.
Yeah,
on a scale of 1 to 10.
I would not say that like it is literally unplayable. I would just say like it is marginal to the point where if any of it sees play, I would kind of be impressed.
Yeah, and also super cool name. I like the way that this flavor thing that they've added into these the new sets with the watermark. I think is a super just awesome idea.
Right.
Having 5 or 6 cards that tell part of the story and letting us know which cards are the real important parts of the story. I think it's just a neat idea that I wanted to echo again. That's just a home run from Wizards.
Yeah, I mean, you have the text here. The workshops are silent. Our creations have been seized. They have killed what made us alive, and that's what Pia Nalar says. So, yeah. I'm going to spoil a little something from the story article. So if you don't want to be spoiled, give me about 10 seconds, okay? All right, I'm
going to hang up real quick.
All right. See you later, Ruben. Take it easy. 3,
yeah.
2, 1. So Saheeli Rai is the one helping to lead the resistance for Aether Revolt. That's pretty cool. That's what's unveiled at the end of that story.
I'm glad they gave old girl something to do, because for a while there she seemed kind of token, where it was like, please tell us that she's not just a female character, that she's not just an Like it really felt like that's all she was going to do for a while. But no, I think it's really cool. And I look forward to seeing her purpose, because when she first came out, I used to call her Sahili Y because I just didn't understand. And so I look forward to them giving her something to do. And, I'm all for it. I think there's a lot of potential in that character.
Nice. So it is really cool that, Sahili's doing a thing. That's nice. She's not just like weird window dressing sort of thing. Yeah. However, so I'm going to move on now to gathering the townsfolk, and where we all get together, we talk about a community issue, and old Sam Stoddard. Now, you and I, in particular, Ruben, have known Sam for a very long time.
Very long time.
We've been hanging out, gaming, battling ever since back in the day. BITD. All right? Mm-hmm. And Sam has now ascended on up to the mothership. He now lives in the stars. Yep. And he decided to ask the Twitterverse how they felt about Standard. And turns out, you ask the internet for some real raw opinions, you're going to get some pretty raw opinions. So
yeah,
Sam had tweeted out, on a scale from 1 to 10, what do you think of the current Standard environment now that it is about over, 10 being the best? Here comes every pro explaining that this format is crap. Brian Kibler 3, Kai Bude 3, Sam Black was like, it's a 3, and I think most people saying 5 agree with me, but don't use numbers efficiently.
Which is just the best.
It's so Sam Black.
It is.
It's the Sam Blackiest thing I've ever seen. At least I've seen in a long time.
We agree. Your basis of reality is just wrong.
What you think of as a scale?
Most everybody is saying something between 2 and 5.
Right. It's bad, and and some people are saying it's some of the worst because. It's a couple things. Now, first of all, I didn't respond to Sam because I wanted to hold it for the show. I definitely feel like we're in 3 territory. Like, I definitely feel like, of the top 10, it's not the worst thing. It's not even as bad as I feel as Theros Mono Black versus Mono Blue was. That was miserable. That was actually like, 1 to 2. Mm-hmm. That was a seriously awful format. This is still bad, but it's not quite that bad. However, Smuggler's Copter, unbelievably oppressive. Imracul, unbelievably oppressive. Gideon, unbelievably. You know what I mean? Like, there's certain things that there's hallmarks of the best cards in the format that are so good you just can't really not play them, or you can't not understand that they are stopping so many strategies from happening. So when they expand the Standard rotation that they spent all this time and effort trying to shrink, and then they go, oh, oops, sorry guys, lol, JK. Now we're stuck with Imracul for that much longer. Whereas before, Amonkhet was coming, and it's like, all right, Amonkhet's coming, we're going to have 2 blocks of Standard, it's going to be totally sweet, we're going to see all these crazy cards from Kaladesh do a thing. No, we're just going to get to see more Imracul for the next year, and it's going to be super awesome. Really excited about that. So yeah, I mean, there have been, and sort of what I also wanted to talk about in this regard was, what do you guys think about Standard? I think it's pretty crappy, but I would even argue it's better than Collected Company was. Collected Company, I think, was also kind of a sort of a get into the 2 range, because like it was literally just Company was better than everything, and you had to play a Company deck. If you didn't play a Company deck, good luck. Now at least you have green black or blue white. Enjoy those options. However, on the flip side, what are your favorite Standard formats and why? And I'll tell you mine to kick us off. Okay. My favorite Standard format was, and I'm an old man, was Time Spiral Ravnica. When Time Spiral block and Ravnica block were together, there was some really fantastic deck building. There was some fun decks. There were some different brews. Not everything had been kind of solved about how certain decks were made. There was a really sweet aggro deck. There were really sweet control decks. It led into a fantastic Time Spiral block season, because Time Spiral had a ton of cards and a ton of strategies, and that was fun too. But Ravnica Time Spiral itself, like Solar Flare, all those sweet things. You had your green, black, white kind of stuff back then that you could sort of make your own brews with, and like Glittering Wish control and stuff. Like, I actually went and found, because I was doing some other research, and I found where I had been playing Glittering Wish control and was talking about it, and it was really sweet. It was like I played 1 Wrath of God and 2 Damnations because I couldn't find 3 Damnations. Like, that was the format. That was so sweet. So like that format was fun.
It was a fun format.
It was super cool. Ruben, tell me how you feel about what the Standard format is and what your favorite Standard format is.
So you said a 2 or a 3?
I'm giving
You
it
said
a
it was a
3.
3.
I'm gonna give it a solid 3.
Which is a 5 because you don't know how numbers work, right?
That's correct. Thank you, Mr.
He
Black.
is from the South. I mean,
I know, right? I
So,
was like 12 and
what's
3/4.
what's the lowest? I'm trying to like put them in order, right? Because it's not, you can't grade on a curve. Not everybody's going to get 80% in this class, right?
Right.
So we got to put it on a curve. So I guess if you put way at the bottom, like Affinity or Combo Winter or something like just miserable, like then people actually started quitting the game. And
Right.
then at the top end, I mean, one of my favorite formats was post Stoneforge and Jace getting banned.
Mm-hmm.
Cawblade standard. Like I really like that format quite a bit, because that deck was still quite good, but you could play other things, right?
I mean, Primeval Titan was also a ridiculous force back then. Valakut.
Yeah.
Was
I mean, I was playing like a Birthing Pod Twin mashup for a while. That was pretty cool in that kind of format. That was a pretty cool standard environment. I think that Time Spiral Lorwyn was one of my favorites. Just for nostalgia's sake, I don't even particularly remember why I enjoyed it so much, but I remember that there was a ton of types of decks that you could play to be competitive. But heading back to this standard format, it's the good cards in all of the decks are so much better than like the worst cards in all of the decks that there's this huge discrepancy where you've got Smuggler's Copters in your deck and you've got like Selfless Spirits in your deck, but then you've got like these useless, kind of crappy duders just hanging around. Like you play, Ishkana and Etherworks Marvel and Emrakul are so much better top decks, or just so much better cards, and Gideon obviously still just the most ridiculous. Are so much better cards than the stuff that you surround them with, that it's kind of embarrassing when you top deck like what's the guy, like Mausoleum Floater idiot, the
Mausoleum
blue
Wanderer.
Yeah, that guy.
Wanderer, yeah.
Like that guy's kind of embarrassing when you compare him to to the power level of Emrakul and Ishkana and even Selfless Spirit, like not that much bigger. So I think that it's a developmental mistake to say, we have these 5 cards and they're going to be the basis of the good decks in standard, and then we're not really going to put anything in between them and the rest of the filler to the set. And that's partially the fault of trying to make it playable for limited. If you have to pack your set full of limited playables, sometimes sometimes it hurts your set's development as a whole. So you have this push and pull, I think. I think I would give this current set, 2.5, 3. I mean, I've certainly seen worse, but there have been a lot better. Standard really just needs Pithing Needle. Honestly, it needs Pithing Needle.
It needs it so bad.
I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous how many problems I think just get solved by having Pithing Needle in the format. People are already starting to main deck Artifact Hate, so like, why not just run it so that Etherworks Marvel has to do something and Vehicles decks have to do something and acknowledge their opponents, right? So that's what I think.
So, and before I hand it off to you, Aaron, I will note somebody in the chat had said, well, there's only green, black, and blue, white, or Etherworks, Marvel, or Panham, or Metalwork Combo, or blue, black summonings, or blue, red spells. Well, let me tell you, the first 2 decks there were tier 1, and everything else was not. So, yeah, there are other decks, but they're not winning tournaments. They're not making the places that other decks are making. Like, I mean, I like to play not tier 1 stuff because, like, who wants to play the thing? And there's always a best deck, and it's always fun for me to attack the best deck and whatever. But Aaron, where do you stand at this point on the format?
So I'm probably going to surprise some people. I'm actually going to kind of defend Standard a little bit. I'm going to give Standard a 6. I'm going to give Standard a 6. I don't normally play Standard. I am more of a modern player, more of a legacy player. Been having a lot of fun playing Vintage lately. I just like doing broken things, and Standard, quite frankly, is a little too fair for my taste. But I did spend the last month playing Standard, getting ready for the Invitational, and I was really surprised. I went into it thinking it was going to be this really stale experience because that's what everybody was saying, and I think that's kind of why I didn't do well at the Invitational was because I expected it to be that way. But when I would go to FNM, when I would go to the Standard Showdowns, when I would go to, even when I played at the Invitational, I played 4 different decks in 4 rounds at the Invitational, and 2 of them were decks I had no experience with. I faced Thermo Alchemist Burn, which has been kind of floating through the format for a while, roundly defeated me. And then I lost to Marvel, which had faded out for a while, but then came back. And, I went into it thinking it was going to be this stale format, thinking I was going to play nothing but Vehicles Flash in the Mirror. And come to my surprise, I got owned by decks I didn't have any experience with. And, that's certainly, I accept responsibility from a preparation standpoint. But, in my experience, though, whenever I played in events, it wasn't like that. And I know that my experience isn't universal, but I think that that's saying something. If you look at GP Denver, for example, the Blue-White Panharmonicon deck, that did reasonably well. We were seeing Black-Green Marvel. I think there was even like a Land Destruction deck that was floating around for a little while. I think somebody had mentioned that on stream. And so I think it's a little more diverse than people give it credit for. I'm a little biased in that I've always found Standard to be quite difficult, actually. I am the kind of person who needs to play a deck for a while to really understand it. And so, having a month to learn a deck was quite difficult. I really enjoyed Delirium the month that I played it. I rented it, so I had to give it back. I would totally play Delirium some more. I thought it was really intuitive. I thought I had just barely scratched the surface of it. And I also understand that it was also the most expensive deck in the format, so maybe people don't want to play that. But I think Standard is a little bit better than people give it credit for. I'm not development girl, I'm not design girl, so those are very good arguments, but I enjoyed it. It wasn't miserable for me. I think it has a lot more variety, and yeah.
Neat. I think that the metagame used to be really cool. Like the Pro Tour metagame was super cool, where you had a bunch of those Thermo Alchemist decks. You had like red-green energy, pummeler aggro, which was pretty cool. And then everyone started playing Black-Green Delirium and Blue-White Spirits, and it very quickly dropped down to where it is now, I think, in most people's minds. And that's just because I think that that's a perception problem. Also, Marvel is miserable to play against because they don't have to do anything. If you put Pithing Needle in the environment, then at least they would have to acknowledge your existence, and they just don't have to currently.
Well, Marvel wouldn't be bad if it didn't have the permanent clause. I faced Marvel for the 3rd time at the Envy, and I remember looking at it on paper and going, how does this deck survive? Like, I was imagining like a really fast vehicles deck getting to the bottom of it, but the version I played was playing Whirler Virtuoso, and so they would make some tokens, block with the tokens, and then every time a token would die, they get energy. Yeah. It was so easy for them to get energy because everything they do, they sacrifice that really crappy puzzle knot and gain 3 life and get energy. You make a really crummy blocker, gain energy. I think if it didn't have that clause, it was just so easy. They were always at 6 energy. There was no way to keep them off of that. And likewise, there's no way to keep people off Delirium either. I was able to get Delirium on turn 2 a lot of the time and be ready to cast Ishkana on turn 4 or 5. And, I can agree that there's not enough hate there where there's no way to punish people. The dedicated blue-red energy decks that people have been making, the control decks, people are firing Harness Lightnings off for like 6 and 7. Like, what? But there's no way to punish you for having excess energy. There's no way to punish you for having Delirium. There's just not enough, there's the argument of not enough hate cards. I think that's a valid concern, that people can literally just do whatever the hell they want.
I also think that there's a lot of interesting interplay in the there are very few choices that I think there are very few choices. Your experience obviously at the Invitational was slightly different, but again, that was a metagamed format. So people were planning on a metagame of 3 decks and then brought things like...
But everything leading up to that had been diverse, too. I had played in a Standard Showdown. I had played in FNMs throughout the week, and these were competitive FNMs. And again, that's just my experience, but I was disappointed that it wasn't stale, because I would have loved to have faced nothing but the top 3, and instead I faced everything.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Well, one of the issues is that you face the deck that, like, Aetherworks Marvel, like, destroys Green-Black Delirium.
Yeah.
And basically can't win versus Blue-White.
Yeah,
So that's one of those, like, absolutely you played against the not tier 1 stuff, because the tier 2 stuff, that tier 2 was literally like, laser focused on destroying the Green-Black Delirium deck, and certainly does, as you saw, because they attack on different vectors. Of course, Blue-White they have counterspells, or they have spell quellers, and they can just kind of wreck whatever it is they're trying to do.
Right.
So that's really interesting. But again, maybe nobody knows how numbers work. Maybe that's where we're at here. Maybe Sam Black is like, you know what? Look, nobody knows what's going on.
The smartest people, some of the smartest people in the world work inside of Wizards of the Coast. So if they can't figure it out, all we're doing is throwing darts at the wall and hoping they stick, and giving them suggestions, them who do this for a living for years and years. We're like, you know what, Mark Rosewater, this one I'm going to give a 3. Guy who's done this forever and is probably the best in the world at it. It's like, what are we really doing, right? But then again, the whole point is that Sam Stoddard brought this upon himself. I'm more interested in why Sam wanted this information.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of interplay here of what does the best mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
How good is this format? Does that mean diverse? Certainly not super diverse. There's a lot of cool interplay, though. When you're in games, there's lots of interaction and ways to, and lots of decisions to make. So from that standpoint, I think that's kind of interesting. Setting aside the Aetherworks Marvel deck, of course, I don't think there are that many interesting decisions with Aetherworks Marvel, but in both Spirits and Delirium, I think there's super interesting things happening within games. So, it really depends on your definition. So, I'm going to forgive WotC the occasional bad standard, considering the worst standard is still Magic, and Magic is great. So,
I wasn't surprised that he was looking for feedback. I mean, we've been seeing reports of standard F&M attendance being abysmal lately. Look at how much they're pushing the standard showdowns. We've never seen them push standard that aggressively before. Typically, it's always been something where we're just going to leave it here. If you want to pick it up, that's fine. But, if you look at all the content that's being pushed out, you have Gabby Sparks teaching you how to play a standard deck for Standard Showdown. You have Maria taking video footage of her local Standard Showdown. They're really pushing Standard, presumably because the turnout isn't great. The Standard Open at the Invitational barely had 300. It was like a little over 340, 350 for a Standard Open. And maybe people didn't know that it was for everybody. But, I mean, to be in Atlanta, which is in a major city as far as I know, there was nobody at that Open for the Invitational, and that's not the only only Standard Open to have had abysmal attendance. I think there was another 350er at the start of the year too, and it's just like, we like to say that we like to say that the legacy events don't quite bring in the people that they used to, but these Standard Opens are having some pretty awful numbers too. And so, you can't deny that there's something wrong where, they're forcing Standard so much. they got to know something's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think they got to know that people have, just kind of gotten tired, is the way to put it. I mean, I appreciate the fact that Wizards always seems to be asking for feedback, whether it's good or bad.
Sure.
Sam, I think, phrased the question in a way that brought out a lot of negative responses because people love to kind of dogpile. If he said, what do you like about the standard format? What is your favorite aspect of the standard format? It involves different responses, but that's okay because that's not what he was looking for. He was looking for these nuggets of truth that I think the pros really gave him of like, look, they've played a long time. They do this stuff for a living. They write about it. They make videos about it. They understand what good and bad is, and this is not really the best standard environment we've ever had set up. This is the first environment where we've had combo, like actual factual combo, for the first time since Time Sieve or something.
Well, you could argue that Rally the Ancestors was a combo deck.
Right.
I mean,
the deck building requirements for Aetherworks Marvel are significantly a lower bar than even Rally the Ancestors. I mean, think about the deck building constraints you need to make Dragonstorm good. You need to put 30 cards in your deck to make Dragonstorm your win condition. You got maybe 10 of extra slots, right?
Sure.
For Rally the Ancestors, you got to put 25 cards in your deck, and otherwise nothing functions properly. Aetherworks Marvel, all you need is Aetherworks Marvel, and then you can just sort of add Whirler Virtuosos, or some decks are playing the Blue Puzzle Knot and some are not, and you only really need 15 really key, max 20 really key cards for Aetherworks Marvel. It's an engine in and of itself, right? So it works in Modern with Greater Gargadon, for example. It has that clause that you were talking about, Aaron. It's a colorless artifact, and it fits right into red-green ramp kind of strategies anyway. So like the deck building constraints on Marvel in particular are super low. But even if you extend that, I mean, Smuggler's Copter goes in every aggro deck because it's a colorless flyer that has card selection. Those are all things that an aggro deck wants. There's no deck building requirement to have a Smuggler's Copter in your deck other than you have to have things that fly it, right? Gideon is another example of this. It goes in every white deck. It goes in aggro decks. It goes in control decks. It goes in mid-range decks. And the function of having all these super powerful cards and not having a lot of stuff in between that and the stuff you fill your deck up with leads to a lot of these mid-range slogs that we end up with. You just try to find the card that 2-for-1's the best. You try to find the Siege Rhino of the format. You try to find the Collected Company of the format. 2-for-1, 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 2-for-1. Lots of multicolored cards. I mean, the mana bases don't help, obviously. The fact that they're so easy to just build your deck with multiple colors. But you don't. There just aren't the kinds of constraints on decks anymore that there used to be. So I think that there's expert set designer Ruben Bressler's suggestion is you need to pull back a little bit. I think you need to pull back on the power level or the mana or something, and make the super powerful cards more difficult to get the cool effect out of.
So you have a format that is rife with Mindslaver effects.
Yes.
Has
that too.
Indestructible triggers. Has resources that are basically uncontained and you can't really interact with them. Mm-hmm. And you have a lot of cost reduction. And it's a good thing that it looks like cost reduction is one of the main things that they're doing in the next set, because no one gets tired of that.
Right. Well,
the shade.
Look, as long as it's inside. To be fair, the cost reduction. So Yahili's Expertise, for example, is on a card that Yaheni's Expertise. Sorry, apologies. Sahili Rai. Expertise.
Yahili and Yaheni, like a portmanteau.
Yeah. That's their tabloid nickname. I guess that goes direct. That one goes directly into Green Black Delirium, which is a problem, obviously. And that one looks like it's the most powerful of the cards that have been spoiled so far. And I'm hard pressed to think of a card that would be more powerful in a Delirium archetype than a Languish, than a Mutilate, than something that has that effect at 4 mana. So that's a problem that might dig a deeper hole, is what I'm looking forward to.
So real quickly, I want to mention that Mark Rosewater runs Blogatog. We've talked about it many times. He answers a million questions. I don't understand how the man has time to do literally anything in his life. But someone had mentioned...
You could ask him. He's here.
I know, right? Of course he is. I'm not against... Someone asked, I'm not against Mythic Staples, which is more of a rhetorical question, but I would prefer not making the best cards of the set Mythic. It feels like money grabbing. And Rosewater basically notes that, development doesn't necessarily know what the best card's going to be. If they were to be able to completely crack the environment with the small number of playtesters they have, you guys would solve the environment within an hour. They have a small pool of cards. They expect a decent portion will impact standard. Some of those cards will be mythic rare because players get upset when all their mythic rares suck. So it turns out Magic players want it two ways.
You don't say.
That never happens. So anyway, he continues saying that there will be, there's a decent portion that will impact standard. What this means is that the best card in the set will always vary. Sometimes it's going to be mythic rare, sometimes it's not a mythic rare. For example, in Kaladesh, the best card is Smuggler's Copter. That is a rare. Sometimes you're in, Theros, and Thoughtseize is still the best card in the set. As it turns out. I know, right? But it kind of goes hand in hand, I guess. Like, they keep trying to make these like really powerful, flashy, impressive cards, like to impress us. We're 21, 22 years in here, to make us feel like we're really getting, we're getting enthused and we're getting excited again. They got to keep pushing the buttons and they got to keep pushing forward, because if they stop pushing, if they stop swimming, that shark is going to start to deteriorate.
Yeah, I mean, Magic's tough. We've already made 16,000 individual cards. How many more ideas are there, right? On the one hand.
There's only 17K. You know that, right? Like, that's the limit.
Yeah.
I do find it funny, though. I do find it amusing to to see the people that are so upset about this Emrakul. I got to Goldfish with Goryo's Vengeance the other day, and it's like, I love the people that are like, Mindslaver locks feel terrible. It's like, how about a 15-15 Annihilator on turn 2? Like, you can tell these people have never stepped foot in an Eternal format, because you think a 13-13 that takes your turn and gives you one is bad? Like, oh, honey.
Sure, but on the one hand, yes. But you're arguing about the Aetherworks Marvels decks that were running like Ulamog. That was very difficult to hardcast. Emrakul, you can just cast. Emrakul's very easy.
I'm just saying, though, it's just very interesting. Like, you can tell the people who've obviously not set foot in an older format, because this to them is the worst thing they've ever seen, where it's like, oh, come, we'll show you some worse things.
Right. And to be fair, new Emrakul, the Promised End, sees play in Vintage in the standstill decks, because you get to trigger your own standstills on your opponent's turn.
That's interesting.
Oh my god,
which is kind of hilarious.
So sick.
Yeah, it's pretty hilarious. But but Vintage is just everything is playable in Vintage.
Vintage is weird. So
and nothing is playable in Vintage at the same time. So
of course.
Who knows about that format?
When everything's powerful, nothing's powerful.
Nothing is powerful.
Yeah.
So let's move
when
on.
We
here.
all have superpowers. No one will.
That's right.
Right? The bad guy from the Incredibles. All right. Never mind.
Well, no, that was Dash. You know, he was like, when everybody's a superhero, no one's a superhero. So we had an interesting tweet that went out because Wizards had a really interesting announcement. This splash damage is talking about how WotC eliminated its organized play volunteers, quote unquote volunteers. They had a Dungeons and Dragons organized play volunteer program, and what they did is they have eliminated it, moving some functions to customer service and retailer support, and suggested that its former volunteers participate instead in the Ambassadors program ran by Herald's Guild, a non-profit organization. And the tweet, as I have it on the screen, says, so Wizards just outsourced their D&D organized play volunteers to another company. Will the same happen to judges? You can bring this up in about, I don't know, 6 months or a year. Yes. Yes, and here's why.
Book it, Dano.
Book it. Put it down right there, right here. December 2016. The Judge program, I don't feel is going to be part of Wizards too much longer. Mainly, you start to see things like this. You know that Wizards is under 2 different lawsuits right now from judges about getting paid as employees. Now, if they were to begin to take the steps of, hey, we ended this, judge-like OP thing for D&D, which was, as I understand it, they would send certain scenarios to stores, like basically certain campaigns, and certain GMs or DMs rather would have those campaigns happen at the store, and that would be like what would get people in the store every week and continue their campaigns and all that good stuff. But again, with multiple lawsuits happening. And there already being some like weirdness around judges and paying judges and what judges get paid for, and are they volunteers or is this a judge program? Is it official? Who knows? I'm just saying, when the canary is dead, you don't go back in that mine. That's all I'm saying. And that canary's pretty dead on this one. It's dead, Jim. It's dead.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I didn't know that they had organized play for D&D, which is kind of sweet.
Well, organized play.
I wish, right. I mean, obviously
Quote,
there aren't
unquote.
D&D tournaments. Like, nobody wins at D&D isn't a game that you win. Like,
that's
not
Ruben?
how D&D works.
Everybody wins at D&D.
Everybody wins, but when everybody wins, no one. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, like D&D as a design of a game, it does not have an end point. It's not Magic the Gathering. It's not chess. It's not that kind of a game. It's collective storytelling. It's really what D&D is. And there's no value system of how good is it? Like, how good are you at D&D? Like how good is your character for this tournament that's coming up? That's not how it works. So on the one hand, I can see how a organized play department for such a type of game could be not something that would work in the long term. On the other hand, canaries and coal mines, boy, this doesn't sound great for the Judge program, how often do we talk about Evan, really? How often do we talk about the Judge program on this show?
Quite a bit.
As often as possible.
We run
really.
it back, yeah.
We do talk about this one a lot, and this is not a new problem. This is a problem that has been facing games like Magic the Gathering, who, to their credit, has done the best at organized play of any game I've ever seen, including esports. Like, the organized play department within Wizards of the Coast is, like, the tournaments are better than Blizzard tournaments. It's better run from the store level to the regional level to the country level to the world level than any game I've seen outside of, like, you know, the real sports like football and soccer and stuff like that. So, you know, on the one hand, hopefully Wizards can sort of stay above the water on this one, but not great, you know.
Yeah, there's multiple sort of factors involved, and there's different things that are happening towards the judge program. I mean, basically, it boils down to volunteers are not. Or you cannot volunteer for a for-profit company. That's not how it works. You know.
Well, I mean, the way that it's always been got around was the judge rewards, judge promos. I guess Judge Rewards was an SCG thing, which, oh, by the way, that ended last week. And I know that this is the part where you stop talking, Evan, but because that's just how the show works. But yeah, I mean, we didn't get to it last week about the SCG Judge Rewards program ending, and I don't have the notes in front of me anymore. But basically, you know, among the big changes that SCG is making going forward into 2017, is that you know, they're doing something very similar to what WotC did to the Adventurers League here. So, you know, it's this is, I mean, you say that there's writing on the wall, and boy, it seems like there's a lot of writing on the wall pointing in one direction. But my hope is that this judge program that has been around and is a pillar of the community, and everyone knows that judges are what make the tournament function.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's going to be a huge impact to anyone trying to run a Magic tournament going forward if judges are not officially connected and Wizards of the Coast eliminates their relationship with the judge program. Like, that's a horrific apocalyptic scenario for Magic the Gathering.
I mean, and Aaron, I'll get to you in just 2 seconds. I just want to really quickly note that, you know, ultimately what it feels like is Wizards is trying to remove liability. If they're able to say we've made steps to get rid of any semblance that these, you know, volunteers, what they would describe as fans, quote unquote, who decide to, you know, just they just so happen to take tests and go through rigorous trials and rigorous events and run these events for very low amounts of compensation, whether it's product or whether it's actual dollars. If they're able to kind of say, look, we're separating these things, we don't want to be associated with these things as much anymore. By the time these lawsuits that are happening get around to being in front of a judge, you're able to say, look, you know, we're trying to distance ourselves because we didn't want this to be a thing where we have to pay, you know, millions of dollars to judges who have worked for, you know, for a dozen plus years and have never gotten paid anything. Aaron?
Yeah, I actually wasn't surprised that this happened. You know, there's been talk of like the writing on the wall, and you could argue that this all started with them eliminating the boards. You know, there used to be the Wizards community boards, and, you know, they've since outsourced that to Reddit. You know, Reddit has either, depending on who you ask, Reddit is either the official, you know, community forum, or it's not the official forum, depending on who you ask and what day it is. So I really feel like it started with that. And I feel like that was the start of sort of this distancing from various things. And, you know, now we're seeing it from the D&D angle. I think it's very possible that there could be something that this could very well trickle down to judges, and it may trickle down even further. It just feels like there's been a gradual shift away from things, you know, for liability reasons, you know, which if you are a business makes sense. But you have to wonder, like, what else they're going to move away from or what else they're going to delegate because they simply either don't want to get their hands dirty or it's just too much to deal with. You know, when in the article about the D&D thing, they were, you know, there was a Wizards representative who said something like, you know, incredible growth in D&D, and we felt it more necessary to focus on growing and communicating with the community. You know, and so they're just basically saying we're too busy and we're too successful to do this. And I don't know. I don't think we've seen the last of this, and I'm interested to see how deep this is going to go.
The other thing about this is that it moves very fast when these kind of changes happen. If you look at the article, which I don't know if so you brought it up on the screen there. It's very difficult for me to link in YouTube, so I've sort of stopped doing it for both chats in the interest of being equivalent, and I apologize for that. But if you read the article, the Adventurers League switch happened like super fast. Like they recently, in I think 2014, updated a lot of the rules and regulations having to do with the judge program, and like a new edition of the organized play program came out. And then just in the beginning of 2016, things started changing in this direction. So it's a very fast-moving process to go from fully fledged, fully supporting of a judge program to having it all be outsourced. So, it's going to move slower for Magic because Magic is more entrenched in with its judges. But I think that it could take less than 18 months from day one of we are divesting ourselves from judges to it's entirely third party.
And, to be fair, I mean, that may not necessarily be a bad thing. Maybe,
sure.
Maybe them pulling away, maybe them being so close to the judge program and close to these volunteers means that they couldn't treat them the way they needed to be treated and deserve to be treated. And so maybe whoever they delegate this to or whoever they allow to handle this might be able to do a better job. Like I don't think it's necessarily doom and gloom.
No, sure.
We have yet to see how they're treated. Maybe they'll get a better deal out of it.
Yeah, I mean, if they're supported by a third party, they can actually like self-regulate and
Which is interesting that if a third party was able to prevent someone from playing in events, that's a really interesting setup to me. That I mean, Wizards. So ICV2 is where we're getting this information. ICV2 is an industry website that talks about sort of industry things. A lot of it's focused on the comic book industry, but it still talks about sort of the hobby market in general. And I didn't really peruse ICV2 much until I started working at Cool Stuff Inc. because they're very much in sort of the hobby market, not just the Magic market. But the point is, when you see stuff like, we asked WotC why the change was made, and they said, with the incredible growth in D&D, we felt it more necessary to shift our priorities to growing and communicating with the greater D&D community. That means nothing. That means actual zero, by the way. It means nothing. It's like she spoke just raw air. It's just nothing. Who knows what that means? However, Herald's Guild answered the same question in its Ambassadors Program FAQs. We don't know for sure, the post said. There are too many legal and business issues at play to know for sure. See, at least that was honest.
Right.
Yeah. And I feel like that one had more potential where it's like, what legal are we having to worry about here? Like, okay. Like, I was more fascinated by that response.
It's all, Robert Heinlein style doublespeak of like, what are you trying to say? What are you really saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mess. So, but I mean, sure, this will develop, and luckily we don't have to deal with it yet, and maybe there will be some sort of roadmap for us if this comes to pass. Please don't happen.
Well, this is not the only place this is happening. Conventions are now becoming the next target because these huge conventions have all these volunteers, quote unquote, and they are volunteering for a for-profit enterprise, which is the convention. And now all of a sudden,
we're gonna do a last week tonight. We're gonna write one for John Oliver on the judge program.
Right.
Oh, man.
And just
send it to him. Let him go on it. Yeah.
That'd be great. All right, so we're gonna spend our last 25, 30 minutes here or so getting questions from our wonderful, incredible viewers because, man, what a slow news week. I know we kind of went on about the judge program, but what we got here, people?
Look how many questions you really got to have. So anyway, hi, everybody. My name's Ruben.
Hey,
I'm the one that typically has the chats up.
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys have questions in the chats, feel free, either on YouTube or Twitch, and I will present them. And we will try to talk through them. Or you can tweet them at us at Magic Mike's Cast on Twitter.
That's right.
And I'll be watching the chats. Somebody else watch the Twitters. If you see an interesting question, feel free to bring it in.
I have an eye on the Twitter twatters. That's all I'd call it. Okay. We're making it happen here. So. Question: will the return of Dredge and Amonkhet finally make? Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
I love it.
Dang
no, read
it.
the whole thing.
Will the return of Dredge and Amonkhet finally make Magic great again?
That's just a perfect. I saw that one earlier. Well done, House of Shadow. Aaron, would
to create a corollary, it's as though it's as though Aaron had been nominated and somehow won the election for head designer, and then for head developer, you hired Alex Bertoncini, and everyone's just like, "What happened?" And they're like, "Well, this is what you wanted."
It's funny because the Masters of Modern podcast, they made a tweet, I think this morning or last night, and they were like, what are your thoughts about unbanning Dread Return in Modern? And I got tagged so much in that tweet, which I thought was glorious. But no, I wish Dredge was coming back. I like to joke with Allie Medwin about that. She works in R&D, and she was celebrating, I think, her 4-year, her 5th-year anniversary recently. I was like, and so you still haven't brought Dredge back? And no, Morrow has indicated it's like a 10 on the storm scale, and it's never coming back. I'm actually quite happy with Delirium. Like I said, I think it's a really dope mechanic, and I'm really looking forward to Amonkhet. Yeah.
Amonkhet.
Okay, I'm so used to playing World of Warcraft. I keep wanting to call it Anka-Ket, which is bad, but no, I'm looking forward to Amonkhet. I think it's great. I wish Dredge was coming back, but no, if you really want to make me happy, just unban Dread Return. Or give me Bazaar in Legacy, because Bazaar is amazing.
Oh Jesus.
I like this question. One of our Twitch chat regulars, Zero Magnum. What other TCGs or digital TCGs or CCGs have you played? What have been some of your favorites, and what have been some of the worst? I'll lead off. Obviously, I've played Hearthstone on my stream a decent amount. I'm like a 6-time legend in North America. Put that up on the board. I've also played a good amount of Kaijudo. I really enjoyed Kaijudo when that was a game.
That was hard.
That existed. Kaijudo was pretty tough, and I really liked Kaijudo a lot because you didn't have to have dice, you didn't have to have pen and paper. Your life total was just all you needed was 2 decks. That's all you needed. And among other games I've played before, I mean, I've played like the Star Wars TCG. I played the Harry Potter TCG when it came out. Wow. I played the Pokemon TCG. I played Overpower back in the day.
Love Overpower.
Versus, obviously the spawn of Overpower, basically. Later on. And so like a lot of those kind of games were a ton of fun. Obviously, nothing ever beats Magic. I would say probably the worst one I played was Overpower, but you gotta give credit to Overpower for being there like early.
It was,
you know what I mean. Also, the Star Wars TCG was overly complicated. I will say that as well. So I think that those are 2 of the ones I did not particularly enjoy. And in terms of underrated, if you get a chance to go back and play that Harry Potter TCG. Like right after book 3 came out, like way back in the day, it was actually kind of cool. I actually quite enjoyed that dynamic that they had in that game.
So, I'll be the voice of dissent here. I didn't think Kaijudo was that clever. I didn't think it was that great. I thought it was kind of simple. I could often.
It was very simple. It was targeted at like 12-year-olds.
Right. You could basically play to the point where, I mean, like there was a point where, like, when it first came out, to give some backstory here, when it first came out, I was like, all right, this is cool. Wizards' new thing. They're pushing it. All right, fine. They send me some stuff. I'm excited about it. I start building some decks. We start seeing what we can do. Start taking out, they look at the rares and the mythic rares of the set. You start to see the archetypes emerge, which is really cool. It comes to the point where I realized that beyond sort of the bluffing moments where they have it or don't have it, I could literally take like deck A and deck B, and it would be like, the blue control deck versus like the red aggro deck, and I could just play them against each other. I could literally just side by side. I mean, like all the decisions are very straightforward most of the time. Again, barring that do they have it, do they not have it type gameplay. So I was not really enamored, and I wasn't really shocked when it finally kind of went to its death knell. Hearthstone, I played for quite a while. I think Hearthstone is fine. I think it's a lot of random number generation. I think you got to get real lucky.
Look, here's the thing about random number generation is that how do you want your luck to exist? In Magic, it's Mana Screw and Mana Flood. In Hearthstone, they've eliminated that and put it someplace else. So do you want to play Blackjack or do you want to play Craps? Like, that's your choice. So it's however you want to flavor your luck.
Sure.
That's my opinion on the Hearthstone being too random.
Right, and I kind of, so I had my sort of Hearthstone phase. I played it. I got to the point where I realized that the randomness that Hearthstone gives me is randomness that I just get too frustrated by.
And that's fine.
And it just is what it is. Not a big deal. Hex, I played Hex. I think Hex is what you play when you want really complicated magic. I've said this many times. There's nothing really wrong with it. I haven't played it in a while, but holy crap, is there a whole lot of complexity versus what I was expecting. I
haven't played Hex yet. I've been told that it's great.
I mean, it's good, again, because people like us, to the point where if you're listening to this podcast, if you're playing at this level, if you're thinking about magic like we think about magic, you're going to be in that realm of like, wow, I can turn this knob and this crank and pull this lever, and if I do this, and like they have this weird like socketed thing where you can like, there's like 8 different ways to make a card work or whatever in addition to its already existing abilities. It's cray-cray. And again, if you like that really deep, really complicated way of a card game interacting, fantastic. It is absolutely the way that Magic Online should be set up, but it isn't. So if you want that look, you can. Eternal is made by Direwolf. Eternal is made by Chapin and LSV and Conley and Company. And it really, really feels like they wanted to fix Magic, and it feels like a fixed Magic. There is very clear correlations of cards in Eternal to cards in Magic. I think you can see cards in Eternal that don't work like the way certain Magic cards do, or cards that are tempered in ways that you're like, oh, like what they wanted to do was create a Wrath, but the Wrath does this instead of the Wrath doing that, or the damage spell does this versus damage spell doing that. You can see a lot of that in there. So Eternal is really cool. I had fun playing it in the beta. I think it's an open beta right now, so anybody can go play it. So you should go check that out, if nothing else, to see what happens when you change the way a mana system works, and you see what happens when basically Chapin and LSV and Company can make their own version of Magic. There's 5 colors, there's multicolor, there's the way the mana works is different, so you don't get a lot of mana screw, but you can still get screwed. It's very, very subtle. Really cool stuff. Lastly, I'll talk about Pokemon. I think Pokemon is like, if I could sit down with Magic Online developers from the top to the bottom, management to the lowest person, sit them down and say, I want you to download and play Pokemon TCG right now.
It's very pretty, very flashy.
It is super good.
I want you to see how easy it is. I want you to see how it's leading people to certain actions. I want you to see how it's rewarding people when they do certain things. Absolutely fantastic. So so that is very much the model for me. This Magic Digital Next or whatever, it literally has to be as good or better than the Pokemon TCG experience, at least the Hearthstone experience, or they've just failed 8 Ways to Sunday, and I'm hoping that's not going to happen. But if that Digital Next thing is Digital Nexting, that's where you should start. And I don't think a lot about the card games I didn't really like much, because I don't usually play them very long.
Right.
For example, there was, I think it was BattleTech. This was back in the 90s. You remember this? It was the mech
I vaguely
game.
remember.
Vaguely.
Yeah, it was the mechs. Yeah,
but here's what
I don't think I ever played it.
Here's what sucked about it. That game, you attacked people's decks. That was their life total. So you would mill people when you dealt them damage. So if something dealt you a bunch of damage and you like milled over your 3 to 4 answers or whatever to that card, you're like, well, I'm completely screwed because I can't even draw an answer at this point. So milling is one thing. Milling as the way that you live and die, and that's what deals damage to you all the time.
Yeah.
Aaron?
So I played Magic. I gave up Magic to play Pokemon. I then moved on to the Star Trek card game, the Star Trek Next Generation card game. Really enjoyed that, but didn't have a lot of people to play with. Marvel Overpower, I loved that game so much. I thought the art was beautiful. I played the Vampire the Masquerade card game for a while because I used to LARP it because I was a really big nerd, and so I wanted to just play Vampire any way that I could. So I did that for a little while. I played Kaijudo. I found Kaijudo to be surprisingly difficult. I wanted to try the card game I always wanted to try was Legend of the Five Rings, because every time I went to Gen Con, I would always hear those guys yelling bonsai, and I was like, that sounds like so much fun, but I just never got around to trying it. I have to say the worst card game that I ever played. Some of you may not know this, but there was a Mortal Kombat card game.
Oh my god.
And it was freaking horrible. And again, I was such a big Mortal Kombat fan. I was a big fan of fighting games growing up, and so not only could I play Mortal Kombat on the console, but oh my god, it's a card game. It was bad. Really freaking bad.
We'll also add, right before I end, unless you have more, Aaron, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I played the Pirates Constructibles miniatures game.
Oh my god, the little cardboard punch-out things?
Yeah, little punch-out plastic ships.
Oh my
That was so
God.
much fun. I played that for about 2 months. I had a ton of fun with like the 3 people that I knew that played that when I was in college, because we were just like, "What the hell is this?" And we were like, "It's tiny pirate ships on a map. I'm on board."
Nice.
Literally on board.
Wow. Literally.
I do that, but you're welcome. Yeah, so that was a ton of fun.
Right. Someone knows Versus System. Versus System is now an LCG, so I didn't mention it because it's not a CCG. It's on a trading card game.
I played it while it was a CCG.
I played it while it was a CCG, and up until turn 4, it's a great game.
It's great. Yeah.
After turn 4, it's just the most miserable
I do like
garbage.
Dominion. I had an ex-boyfriend get me into Dominion.
Yeah,
which
like
is a
deck
lot
building
of fun.
games like that are a ton of fun too.
And I feel like the skills that we learn from playing Magic translate really well to those games, I've found.
Oh yeah, and of course Ascension was the biggest kind of deck building game to come out of the Magic community. Justin Gary and Brian Kibler and friends, they made that one.
I got a new question.
Okay.
We have a ton of people in both chats who are asking about our opinions on Frontier. So I'm going to choose one of the questions, sort of not at random, but I'm going to take one of the ones that has a specific Frontier focus. I'm going to go back and try to find it.
Okay.
Real quick. Do you think... No, that's not the one. How do you feel about... Well, that might take us in a weird direction. But anyway, I'm Always in the Tank has a great username, so I'm going to use his.
I love that name.
How do you guys feel about content creators addressing Frontier? So I think that's a question in that it's not an official format. How do you feel about folks from the big 3 websites addressing an unofficial format? And another question here from Jamie Infante on YouTube. Frontier is creating a huge buzz in the Magic community, both in-store and with the online channels, all citing strongly for or against. Where do you guys feel this new format will lead?
I have to say I'm very puzzled by the response. As a content creator, there are some things that we just don't care about. I think Ruben and Evan can attest to the fact that when we're coming up with show notes, sometimes there are things happening in the community that we don't feel either way about. Like, we're not against it, but we're not necessarily, we're just meh about it. And so there are things that if we truly don't care about it, we don't talk about it. I'm of the mindset where if I don't like a format, I just don't play it. Right. I don't have to go on tangents about it. I simply don't do it. And so I'm very confused by the very strong reactions from people who, have all these things to say about it, but yet there's probably nowhere near them that even offers it. It's not a sanctioned format, so it's not like you're losing anything. So it's not like you don't like. I mean, there are people who don't like standard, but if they don't play standard, they're missing out on Planeswalker points, or their gold standing, or there's something on the line if they don't play it. You're literally losing nothing by not playing it. And so there are people in the community. I don't have a dog in the fight either way, and so I just don't care enough either way. And so I'm really wondering what's causing such passion to where you just, it's not enough to say I don't really want to play it. I freaking don't like it. And I don't understand how the pendulum has swung so far. Really? Like, what's driving this passion there? Because people are very passionate about it, and I don't understand why. People that I would expect to sort of be better than that. Like, there are people who I'm very surprised have had negative things to say about it, because they are the same people that normally, are the bright spots of the community and saying, play whatever you like and Magic is great. And even they're coming out and saying this format is trash. And I'm like, that's really not like you. And so I just don't understand what's causing this reaction.
Right. I mean, I think ultimately it's Frontier. Again, my first impressions was a solution in search of a problem, because Modern, if people are upset at Modern, I got news for you. You're also going to get tired of Frontier for the same reasons. Like, sure, the right now we are in the new shiny phase. Okay, it's like when you get a new car. Whether it's a used car or a new car, when it's new
You're
to
the honeymoon
you,
phase of a relationship.
exactly. You're in the honeymoon. The shine hasn't worn off yet on that car. The butterflies haven't worn off yet in that relationship. Like everything is great. Everything is wonderful. Nothing bad has happened. It's all sunshine and lollipops, and that's great. But what you're going to find is you're going to get yourself. We're going to repeat history, and we're going to make a line in the sand, just like Modern did. And it's like, man, if Modern just didn't have 8th edition, what a wonderful friggin' world it would be. And now Frontier is like, man, what a wonderful world it would be if we didn't have these, extra 7 years or whatever of cards, and instead could just draw the line in sand here. So do I understand? Sure, I get it. It's the same reason tiny leaders started getting all excited. To me, it is the definition of a fad, and whether that fad turns into a trend, and whether that trend turns into actual something actionable from Wizards, is a question mark. I don't think Wizards is looking to make new formats. Like, it's not that Modern is really suffering. It's that people are kind of tired of it, but that's okay. Extended, people were like suffering. People hated that format. It was ridiculous. They had to ban Sensei's Divine Top because it was making tournaments last too long. That's
and yet
why
it's
they banned
allowed
it.
to exist in Legacy. Where is just
Brainstorm's allowed to at least exist in Legacy.
No, you did not.
I went there. 2-2.
Do you have the red zone slide handy?
Oh God. Oh
look,
God.
Man, just let people enjoy things, Evan.
Oh, now we're letting people enjoy things.
People enjoy. First of all, Magic cards are hard to get in Japan and Brazil and Germany. So like, that's part of the appeal of that's the problem. Is that old cards are hard to get overseas, right?
Okay.
So they can't just sanction a Legacy tournament willy-nilly. Even Modern is difficult to get to for folks. I mean, in our very first Patreon hangout, we had a Brazilian gentleman who was like, yeah, we don't have enough stuff. We just can't run standard tournaments, right? So the problem that you're searching for doesn't exist in America. Hashtag first world problems. Hashtag world, and also the other thing about Frontier that I found is people just, like playing with their old cards. It's the only format that people get to actually play with Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time anymore. Like, you can't even play those in Vintage because they're restricted. So just let people play with their cards that they like to play with, like Siege Rhino and whatever. As for the creators, we're all creators here. People want our opinions on things. And when they say they want our opinions on things, sometimes they don't really want our opinions on things, because sometimes we have negative opinions on things.
They want us
Evan,
to
not
agree with
liking
them.
Frontier. Yeah. So they want us to be like, yeah, your new format's great. No problems at all. I can't. You have fun, kiddo. And that it's not always the case. Now, when you get to somebody, for example, the professor at Tolarian Community College, that is not a voice that we're used to hearing say, this is bad, right? He'll lay out a lot of reasons for, like, you maybe shouldn't buy this random thing that was printed in 2007, but he won't actively say your fun is wrong, which is kind of a weird thing to hear from folks.
Are you trying to say that I'm saying that their fun is wrong? Because I'm not saying their fun is wrong.
Look,
I'm saying
I also think that my biggest issue was I think that that's a false equivalency with Tiny Leaders. I think Tiny Leaders had like way less support than Frontier ever had. Like, we just talked about how they were packing the halls.
Frontier has
at
its own
Grand
tab
Prix
on MTG
Chiba.
Goldfish now.
Yeah.
Like, when you look at the metagame tab, it is making enough of a ruckus to have its own link where you can see the metagame of Frontier and see what decks people are playing in these tournaments. And I think that's saying something. Like, when MTG Goldfish, which we turn to for being our source for news and deck lists and things like that, if even they're picking up on it, I think that means something. And ultimately, here's my ultimate stance on Frontier. I'm fine with Frontier being a thing if it means I don't need to read another think piece about what's wrong with Standard or what's wrong with Modern. I appreciate people who take their ball and go play elsewhere. Like if they say, you know what, these are the formats I have available. I'm not going to get my happiness from these. I'm going to go make my own fun. I'm going to go be the change I want to be, so to speak. And I wish more people would do that. I wish more people would play what they love to play and stop keeping themselves in situations they're not happy in. This is a group of people who weren't getting it from the obvious options, and they made their own fun. I respect the hell out of that, and I wish more people would just play what they love to play so that we don't got to hear about it all the time when you're doing things you clearly don't want to be doing.
Counterpoint, you're going to, first of all, you're going to get those you're going to get those same articles about Frontier eventually. Sure. Secondly, MTG Goldfish has tiny leaders as an option in the metagame too.
Okay.
But just because we don't experience tiny leaders in our neighborhoods and our whatever doesn't mean other people aren't out there playing it.
And there's nothing wrong with them playing it.
Yeah.
It's hard out here in the streets, Evan. And also it's cold.
But it's really easy to say nobody's playing tiny leaders, but clearly people are. And so just because it's not in our echo chamber or in our bubble, that doesn't mean that it didn't. People like say, well, tiny. Well, it maybe didn't get as big as people. It didn't turn into a sanctioned format. But to say that there aren't still pockets of people playing it, to say that there aren't still communities who enjoy it, that's inaccurate, I think.
I slightly misquoted, as Jason B mentions here in the chat, the professor. He supports anyone playing any format, but he says in his video that the format isn't for him. I didn't want to misquote the professor there real quick. But look, those are our opinions on Frontier. I think it is kind of weird that it's an unsanctioned format that has so much content behind it. I do think that's a little odd. However, that's how Commander started. So,
well, to be fair, it has been a slow news week, so maybe the content creators were like, well, let's do Frontier.
Ain't got nothing else. I mean, Wizards is about to enter their 2 week we do nothing, we're at home chilling on our butts phase for the next couple weeks.
I wasn't passionate either way about Frontier until I clicked on that metagame link on MTG Goldfish, and I saw that Bamp Starfield was happening, and I was like, I can play with Herald of the Pantheon and Sigil of the Empty Throne and Starfield Annex. I'm in.
I mean, I would love a sanctioned Pauper format, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, Pauper is another one that's just kind of weird that there just isn't sanctioned anything for it, and no one. I mean, very few. Not no one. Sorry, Alex. Very few people write content on
He's going to get you for that.
He is going to get me for that.
I got Alex over to Gathering Magic. I thought he did a great job writing articles, and he needed to have a better platform, and so we made that happen.
I completely agree. I'm just saying that it hasn't taken off the way that Frontier has. They've packed GP Chiba with side events for this format.
And that's
all
great.
I'm saying.
I'm happy. Look, all I'm saying, A, play Magic that makes you happy, no doubt.
Yeah.
Secondly, do not think for a second that we are not going to relive history on what happened with Modern. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be new. It's going to be fresh. Something's going to get broke. Some people are going to break it in half. Oh, God. Then they ban something. They ban something stupid. People are complaining about it. Like, we're going to go through the same cycle.
You got to just let people make their own mistakes, man. You got 5 kids. They're all going to make mistakes.
Trust me.
Teach them.
I know. Lord God, do I know this?
They're going to get scars on their chin from falling forward on the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to date the wrong kind of guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen. I'm sorry. He's going to have a motorcycle.
They're going to try to take the car off the cinder blocks in the front lawn.
Yep.
I mean, you're going to make mistakes.
They're going to try to steal my shotgun, and they're going to take my chickens, and I'm be like, "What you doing with my chickens?" And they're like, "Screw you, Dad! You don't know nothing." And I guess in the back of the Harley, they're holding the chicken off in the distance.
People, look, they got to relive the extended mistake. They got to relive the tiny leaders mistake. You just got to let them. You got to let those baby birds fly, Evan. And also, just let them have fun. You keep saying it's a problem or a solution in search of a problem, and it's like everyone who's ever lived in another country is like, no, shipping costs money. And is like, sometimes we need a format that makes us not lose our entire paycheck. I think that's the problem. So, yeah.
Next question.
Well, the next question is that we got to turn the corner.
Wow.
to the finisher. Ladies and gentlemen,
We could have done that forever. We should
you know what? I had an absolutely great time doing that.
Yeah, we should do that again.
It was really interesting. Thank you guys very much for the questions. I wish we could have gotten to multiple of them.
In the future, we will figure out that we have nothing to talk about, and so I'll set up like a Reddit thread, and we'll tweet out some stuff, and we'll get some responses early so that we can have this slightly more often.
Fantastic. So we're going to move our way to the finisher. The final StarCityGames.com Players Championship in its current form will be coming this weekend in the Star City itself, Roanoke, Virginia. 16 of the world's greatest Magic players that live in the New England and Atlantic area will come together and battle across a myriad of formats to crown the Players Champion. They know that I love all of them, and they're wonderful people.
Yeah, they're all super great.
Right, but it will be leaving us at the end of 2016. So if you were to come up with a new process to crown the champion of the Open Series, what would you select? Aaron?
Okay, I've got it. I think we put it to a vote. Okay, we look at all of the deck lists that everyone near the top of the standings, and whoever played the fewest red decks and has the best hair wins.
Whee!
I like it.
With the best hair and everything. Yeah. Ruben?
What happens if Reed plays a lot of red decks one year, though?
He did play a red deck one time, and it was devastating. Didn't he play Burn at like a Legacy? At the Eternal Weekend, he did, and I was hella torn.
No, you weren't.
I was very torn. I was Natalie Imbruglia torn. I was just like, I can't.
Nothing's fine.
No.
Broken on the floor.
I was just like, I can't. Who do I choose? Who?
She was all out of faith, Ruben. this is how she felt.
Yeah. Suddenly my room became sepia tone. I don't know what happened.
My life is a Snapchat filter. What is happening?
Well, all I can say is I think that the only reasonable way to solve it is a Royal Rumble. With not the Magic format, if you recall the Royal Rumble. No, I'm talking like WWE SmackDown, Monday Night Raw style Royal Rumble. So you put everybody in a square, you put them in a 20 by 20 foot square, and then have them settle it that the way that God intended, punching each other in the face, taking a lot of steroids. Yes, allegedly.
That's right. Allegedly.
Oh man.
Totally.
Unchecked aggression.
That's right. Fair enough. So, since the whole standard format has become Ishkanah versus Smuggler's Copter versus Aetherworks Marvel, I suggest we do something similar for the next Players Championship, and we just break it down and play what we're really playing: rock, paper, and scissors. Did you see that video?
Yes, oh my God.
Of those two
about to ask you.
like Japanese girls or whatever? And they're the girl is just like, pop, pop, scissors, and the girl had rock, and oh my God, the world is ending.
It was so good.
It was amazing.
Also, how is that a thing? And then the Magic Pro Tour just doesn't get any viewers. I just can't with it.
Unbelievable. So that ends another episode. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Aaron, for hanging out.
Thanks for having me.
Ruben, thank you for joining us.
See you next time.
That's right. And for all those fantastic listeners that happen to be listening or watching right now, that ends another episode of Magic Mics. Thank you guys very much for joining us here to discuss all things magic. I want to thank my co-host, you guys, for watching, and hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Visit our website at magicmicspodcast.com that exists thanks to our Patreon supporters. Or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people that we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmics, on Twitter at magicmicscast, on Reddit at reddit.com/r/magicmics, and on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmics. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week. Same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.